Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by foundersuite.com. Today I have Bryton Shang of Aquabyte.ai coming to us from San Francisco. How's your day going?
It's going great, and great to be here.
Thanks for participating. So what is Aquabyte?
Aquabyte, we're a company based in San Francisco as well as Bergen, Norway, and we build software for fish farms. And I can share a bit more about that, but
please
really,
go on, yes.
Building machine learning, computer vision software for fish farms.
I did watch the video, so I'll prompt you a little bit. So as I understand it, this software is on a camera or connected to a camera that's in the water in the middle of a fish pen, so to speak, and it's essentially filming and counting lice, size and weight of the fish that are being farmed or raised. Is that correct?
That's right. So we have a camera. The camera goes in the fish pen. The fish swim around or filmed by the camera. Then using computer vision and machine learning algorithms, we can determine the health of the fish. So you mentioned sea lice, a parasite. We can weigh the fish. We can also determine various things that relate to, for example, the appetite of the fish, how hungry the fish are, and the ultimate vision is to build a fully autonomous fish farm.
How do you weigh a fish with a camera? Is it just size times known, average weight per size kind of thing?
Right. The way to think about it, so if you've seen one of our videos, the camera has two lenses. And like our two eyes, we can perceive depth. The camera can figure out how far the fish is and figure out the proportions of the fins, the tail, the head, and then we use that to create a 3D model of the fish, which then we can then determine the weight of the fish.
Okay, interesting. And where did you come up with this idea? I usually say, were you a fish farmer or a machine learning expert? I'm going to guess it's the machine learning side of things, but I could be wrong. Where'd you come up with it?
Right, so you guessed correctly. So my background is in data science and machine learning. I studied that at Princeton, and then after that had worked in and started a number of companies. So for example, first company was in algorithmic trading, building models to buy and sell stocks. Also had a bunch of other companies involved in machine learning, was also involved in another company that was using deep learning for cancer detection. This company I incubated out of a VC here in San Francisco, but really the idea was to apply machine learning to a big industry. The idea for fish farming came from an old co-founder of mine. One of his business school classmates had owned a fish farm. And there's a longer story to this, but I'd been really fascinated. I had read some papers about how they were using cameras to size fish, and it's just like one of the largest and most impactful food sources that we don't necessarily know about too much in the US, but is really important for food sustainability. And so connected two and two together, and then ended up starting a company to focus on this.
Yeah. So talk about those Genesis days. You said is incubated out of a VC. How do you incubate something out of a VC? Like, did you get funded by these guys previously, or tell that story?
So to give a bit more context, we were incubated out of NEA, New Enterprise Associates. You may have heard of them because they're the largest VC in the US. I think they have something on the order of like 22 billion, and just really, really well-known VC. I had known one of the partners there, was a classmate of mine at Princeton, and we had kept in touch over the years, and I'd gone to him. So I was thinking about my next startup. Was I gonna kind of go the traditional route? So my previous companies have been VC funded as well, kind of build it myself. But so I've been catching up with a number of my friends, and he was like, well, if you're going to start a new company, why don't you incubate it here? And this is not this is not like Y Combinator, or they don't have like a formal program for this, but it was an informal thing where they would take a percentage of the company up front, of course, give me some money to pay my salary, and then I could have access to their office space, have access to their partners to help brainstorm ideas, and naturally, whatever idea I would come up with, the hope would then they could lead the seed round investment in. So there I had partnered with a partner called Amit Mukherjee, and he had paired me with another venture partner at NEA, Greg Papadopoulos, who is better known as the former CTO of Sun Microsystems. And from there, because I had worked with NEA from day one, they had helped me come up with an idea that we knew was VC fundable and had the right characteristics, and provided me with a lot of support. And then from there, and ended up growing the company.
It's interesting though, because it is like an incubator. I guess the traditional incubator you think of, they're betting mostly on you, right? Because you didn't have a product, you didn't really have a, it's mostly you, right? That they're kind of banking on at that point.
I would agree with that.
That's awesome. And I mean, do they take like a meaningful equity stake? Like, that's awesome if you don't have to go raise that annoying friends and family round or something. But, is it a good deal for the entrepreneur if you can get this sort of incubation at a VC?
I think it's a win-win, because the VC gets to be able to have early access and invest in great founders. And the entrepreneur gets a platform by which they can vet a lot of different ideas. And actually, when I had started to incubate the company, I had been considering it wasn't just like fish farming from the start. There were a couple of different ideas. And so I was able to pressure test that with them and co-develop the idea.
Yeah. And that was another question I was going to ask is, what if the idea pivots multiple times? I mean, I guess they're not betting on a specific product or concept or even company or even market necessarily, right? They're just betting on, we're going to do something in the machine learning space, and what comes out of it is hopefully a venture deal. Is that right?
Right. Well, I think actually that's actually not too dissimilar from the thesis a lot of seed investors have, where, again, if the company is really early on, it's really the founding team and an idea, and you're betting on the founding team to come up with the right idea. And so it's just an earlier form of that.
It's true. Did you have any concern that, if NEA doesn't go on later, to the signaling risk issue, if they don't go on to lead the next round, is that a risk when you do this kind of incubation model?
I think it is a risk, and especially with NEA, they're such a large firm, and even something. So they originally invested like $200K, even $1 million. It's pales in comparison to the size of their fund. Though I would say it really comes again back to the relationship with the partner and the founder. And I had known Amit since our time at Princeton, and really there's that trust involved, and they're incentivized to, because essentially by funding me, they had provided me with salary and the brain space, because otherwise I would need to do work on the side to pay my bills and everything.
Yeah.
To work full time on this, and so of course there's that signaling risk, but it's highly advantageous for both of us to make sure it works, because it's also the partner taking a risk on me, especially for a program that's not so well established.
Cool. Let's move forward. What was after that? I'm looking in PitchBook. I see a seed round. Was that the next kind of chunk of money?
Right. So there was the initial pre-seed, let's call it, from NEA, and actually also had received an additional amount of capital from Princeton University itself. What happened was, so I had been investigating aquaculture, and as it turns out, Norway salmon, the aquaculture industry there, it's a salmon aquaculture is a $20 billion industry, and half of that is made in Norway.
Really?
So throughout my investigation, it just so turns out that Norway is a terrific place to start the business because they have this established salmon aquaculture industry. Norway is very tech forward, and there were specific regulatory impetuses, and it just made a lot of sense to start the business in Norway. And so ended up going to Norway, talking to the fish farmers there, finding a number of fish farmers that were very interested in the product that we were building. So again, to size the fish and to count the sea lice. And so coming back from Norway, I was convinced, okay, this is the place it's got to be. I see the interest from the farmers to take this to the next level. Need to raise more capital. Now imagine me in Norway. I'm not a fish farmer, but and trying to convince some Silicon Valley VCs of fish farming. Like, what is fish farming? Like in Norway, how am I even gonna who do I even call to vet what I'm saying is true or not? So at first it was quite a challenge. So NEA had kind of agreed to lead the seed round.
Okay.
And we were figuring out to figure out how to get some additional follow-on investors. And again, I'm running into this challenge where I built, and by this time I built a prototype. I built a prototype of a camera that's able to size fish, but really it's this is really out of scope for a lot of VCs in Silicon Valley who are used to more traditional tech. And what I ended up doing was flying back to Norway, and I would set up video chats with farmers and live stream, Facebook live stream my visits to the farm to actually show them this is real. You can talk with the farmers. You can ask whatever questions you want. And the other thing I did was I structured it as a sort of open house. So whichever VCs were interested could log on to the Zoom meeting, and they could see the other VCs in the room and have a group chat and ask similar questions. And really after that, that was when the process for us closing the seed round really accelerated, because a bunch of VCs, after they had seen it and seen it was real, just started indicating interest and ended up closing a $3.5 million seed round.
I love stories like this that just sort of show the behind the scenes hustle that founders have to go through, right? That's brilliant. So let me just pick that apart a little bit. So you would literally go to say 10 VCs and say, on this date on Tuesday at 10 a.m. or whatever, I'm going to be live streaming my chat with a real salmon farmer who's prototyping my thing. Please join it. You can understand what we're all about. And then some of them would show up and just kind of follow along. Is that correct?
Right. So they could watch the live stream. And then I would also have scheduled one-on-one chats with the farmers. And I'd be there in person, but of course we'd be subscribed into the Zoom. And then the VCs would ask questions. They would how much of it, how big of a pain point is this for you? How much would you pay for it? And they're face to face directly with the fish farmer. And so they could ask raw and filtered questions. And this was particularly because a lot of VCs here, they wouldn't have the first idea who to call to get in touch with the fish farmers themselves.
That's really interesting. And how did you get the fish farmers to agree to be kind of, your advocates here, or what? Or they just wanted the product so bad, or what?
So I think the flip side of it is that the fish farmers were really excited to have a Silicon Valley company come and take interest. To give an example, Norway is the second largest market for Tesla. And so these farmers, they're not necessarily what we traditionally think of farmers. They're really, really sophisticated folks that invest in the latest technology, and they're very excited to have Silicon Valley folks come and very open to sharing. And so it was no problem to help to find folks like that.
That's cool. It's cool. Great. That's a really fun story. So I guess let's you get this, NEA is already leading it, and you just got enough interest to fill it out from the rest of the round, right? And then what's next? You did a Series A, correct? Not too long ago, $10 million Series A. Maybe talk about what led up to that and your preparation for Series A, and if there are any other fun stories of,
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to the seed, so we had originally gone out to fundraise somewhere in the ballpark of $1 to $2 million. We ended up closing the round at a $3.5 million seed that was like 3 times oversubscribed. And part of that was we had also brought on a co-lead at Costanoa Ventures.
Okay.
And keep in mind, at this time, it was like me. I think I had brought on another friend from Princeton who was like our first employee, moved out of NEA's office, moved into Costanoa's office, who was helping incubate us. And this was really at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. The idea now was, okay, we're going to start to grow the team. We're going to get a camera in the water in the Norwegian fish pen, and we're going to start commercializing our first product. So I'm working on this all throughout 2018. Towards the tail end of 2018, what happened? So and keep in mind, I mean, we had raised $3.5 million, which is on the high end for a seed round, and so we had a lot of runway. In addition, we raised an additional $1 million in debt, and so we were quite well capitalized, and we didn't need to raise money. I think we would still have enough money to, like, if we had not raised Series A until now. Yeah. But what happened was towards the end of 2018, NEA and Costanoa were talking to me and like, well, Bryton, what are you thinking about the Series A? And I'm like, well, not thinking about Series A because we have enough money. But what happened was, okay, they're like, okay, well, let's come visit Norway and we want to check it out. And over the next couple months ended up offering to NEA and Costanoa co-lead the Series A. And because it was a bit earlier than I had expected, and we're on the cusp of launching a new product, and so I was like, okay, like, happy to consider it. If it's something that is a fair offer, and we can see what that is. And so really, yeah, the Series A for me was really just so sort of formed organically with our existing investors coming and asking to do a Series A somewhat preemptively.
I mean, I can get it how being on the ground or on the water in Norway could get people excited, but still you don't have a lot of customer traction at that point, right? I mean, so I guess what was it that really got them so fired up to want to kind of preemptively do another round?
I think it's a couple of things. One is just they had seen the velocity at which we had executed on the product side. While we weren't live at any customer sites, there was a tremendous amount of demand from Norwegian farmers. So we're talking about large multi-billion-dollar fish farms coming to us to install the technology. We also had a regulatory impetus, so it's not just that they have an economic incentive to deploy the product, it's also the law, and so it helps them comply with the law. And so there was just a lot of indications that additional capital could really help accelerate the business, and they were convinced of semblance of product market fit. And so even though we weren't necessarily in market with the first product, they had seen enough indicators that convinced them that this is a legit market, and we want to put more money into it.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. The salmon, the fish farming industry is much larger than I would have guessed, but that's the whole of the industry, right? 20 billion. Is selling these cameras, like, that seems like that would still be a little bit niche though. Even if the industry is big, like the specific sales would seem to be niche. Or what's the business model? Maybe take it that way. Is it
So we have a camera system that goes in the pen, though we run the software side of that. So we actually partner with camera companies in Norway that make the aquaculture cameras. there's actually a number of prominent suppliers. We partner with one of the prominent suppliers of those cameras. They make the cameras, we sell the software and charge a subscription fee for the software. Now,
Gotcha.
if you look at the economics of a fish farm, you'll see that half of the cost of running the farm is the feed. They feed the fish. And then about a quarter of the farm is managing this sea lice parasite, which is a big nuisance for the fish. So our first product, the sea lice counter, addresses that 25% of cost. And our second product, the weight estimation, or rather like if you can track weight over time, you're really tracking the growth of the fish. And the thesis there being, well, if I understood I fed from A to B and I used a different feeding algorithm and I was 10% more efficient, then well, I could save on feed costs. That's addressing the other 50% of the cost equation. And so it actually is addressing quite a significant cost for the farmer.
Just because I know nothing about this, if your camera identifies too many sea lice or something, what happens? How do they get rid of the lice, or how does this remedy, that issue?
So if you have too many sea lice, it's bad for the fish, bad for the wild fish. They have to de-lice the fish, which really means that this big boat comes to the farm, and it's like this boat-sized washing machine that sucks the fish in. The fish get, well, it depends on the method. It can be like hot water. It can be mechanical. There's a variety of methods where they remove the sea lice and then put the fish back.
I gotcha. Okay. So gotcha. That helps. Does your analytics help, other than notifying when that needs to happen, does it help reduce the sea lice somehow?
Well, the idea is that, and then this is also a very expensive procedure for the farm. We're talking on the order of $100,000 each time. So we record the data on what type of treatment was used, how many fish died, how effective was the treatment. And once we've seen the same treatment 100 times, then we can figure out, okay, what is the best treatment for the fish and to improve the overall welfare of the farm. So we do some things in terms of being able to have proactive treatments for the farm.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Cool. Great. Back to fundraising, jumping around a bit, when NEA and Costanoa kind of wanted to come in and do a Series A, did you ever think about, how do I put this, being too heavily centered on this one or two investors? Did you ever think about going around and shopping around just to get more people on the board, or more people, involved?
So let me, so one thing I didn't mention about the seed round was we also had a couple follow-on investors. We had Struck Capital, we had Alliance Venture, which is a Norwegian-based VC. We also had a couple other investors. And so in terms of representation and skill sets, well, for us, a lot of VCs would normally, for example, help out in customer intros. I mean, the chance of a VC knowing a fish farm is a bit lower. And so it wasn't so much for that as for just helping with general company building. And so from that perspective, NEA is a great fund, really well known. And so there's the recognizable name there. And Costanoa Ventures, they're a smaller, more boutique fund, but they're really, really high quality investors, and they invest a lot into their founders. And so between the two, had really great support on the company building side. In Norway, had Alliance Venture, who had been helping us out. And so actually, aside from the aquaculture aspect, we were fairly well covered with our existing investors. Now, when it came to the Series A, of course, we don't just want to be focused on Norway. We also want to go to Scotland and Canada and Chile. And among those geographies, Chile seemed to be the most obvious one because that's the second largest salmon farming country. And with the Series A, we brought on Alaya Capital, which is a Chilean-based VC firm.
Alaya?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Never heard of him, but that doesn't mean much.
Well, I
Alaya.
don't know how many Chilean VCs you know, but they're very focused on that specific region.
Oh, cool. Interesting. Look them up. Very cool. And does this have applications beyond aquaculture? Do you put a camera in a feedlot of cattle and it somehow does anything? Or is this, maybe you don't want to give away too much of your future path, but any big expansion plans?
Well, I think that actually, I know a bunch of companies that do that, and it's conceptually very similar. For us, we built a lot of technology that is well suited for the aquatic environment. Fish farming, so I mentioned the 20 billion number. That's only for salmon. We're really talking about beyond salmon. It's also trout, sea bass, sea bream, tuna, snapper, a bunch of these species that are grown in the ocean, and that's also kind of there's other types of environments where they grow fish as well. So we're talking in tanks, in the open ocean, near shore, and so for us, aquaculture is there's a lot of room to run.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at it in the context of food sustainability, which is also a key part of our mission. I mean, fish farming is one of the most efficient ways of producing protein. It's a lot more efficient than chicken or beef, both in terms of pound for pound, how many pounds of feed to produce how many pounds of protein. In fish, it's about 1-to-1. And also in terms of when we talk about climate change, carbon emission wise, I mean, I think it's like 10 times less carbon emissions than like a cow. And so for us, part of this is also championing food sustainability. I mean, a fraction of the food, I think it's like 5% of the world's food is made in the water, but the water is like 70% of our landmass. And so if we can increase more production in the oceans, that would be a really great thing. And so part of it is the food sustainability. Part of it is that, like, I think it's a large market, and yeah, I mean, I think, like, if you look at the entire aquaculture industry, it's almost $250 billion.
We had one, I guess you kind of call him a competitor or a disruptor, I don't know what you want to call it, on this show called Finless Foods, that's actually growing lab grown seafood. So I guess that's another approach. Pretty interesting stuff.
Well, the thing is, so they've projected 50% protein deficit, and if you add up all the kind of traditional agriculture, aquaculture, cell-based proteins, like everything, I still don't think you have enough. And so I think it's great that there are other companies working on alternative protein sources, but I think we're all in this together to make sure that the world has enough food to eat.
Yeah, for sure. Really good stuff. All right. Well, anything we haven't covered, anything else, any tips or bits of advice you'd like to give other founders, either in pursuing capital for non-traditional businesses or just in general?
So I think the one question that might be interesting to talk about is, like, how many VCs that I have to go through, to how many VCs that I talk to. I've probably chatted with easily 100 VCs for the seed round, and we're talking. I mean, there'd be days when I'd be talking to like 5 VCs, and of course, these aren't casual conversations. You need to be like on, and you need to be like presenting well, and it's very, very draining, and distracting from the business, and yeah, I mean, I think even for us, I mean, even us having NEA leading the round, and you'd think like NEA is a great firm, like we'd be able to easily raise follow-on capital, is a bit difficult. And so really, I think part of it is, well, I mean, this is sort of just like a bit of generic advice, but like, don't give up. Like, I mean, like there will be folks that will believe in you and invest in you, even if it's like a weird idea, like fish farming that no one's heard about. I'd also say what I would do is, like, after every pitch, like I would sort of adjust the pitch deck a little bit. And so after like the 20th pitch, well, that's like 20 different iterations in your deck, and each one you get a little bit better. And if you've heard the same thing like 5 or 10 times, well, you pretty much know what they're going to ask, and you know how to tailor your presentation. And so I would see it as a bit of an adaptive process where there's a bit of warm up, and yeah, like over time, like iterating, and by the end, I mean, you kind of got the pitch down, and you kind of know what folks are going to ask. I think also, so NEA told me, like, so for every company they invest in, they talk to 250 companies. I think something like of that order of magnitude. And so the chance of any one investor investing is quite low. So yeah, I mean, you sort of have to figure out like the right fit. And I think a lot of it is also finding the right partner. So for us, like, for example, when we were oversubscribed for our seed round, we had our choice of a lot of other great investors to co-invest with. But for me, it really came down to finding the right partners that I'd be able to pick up and call on a moment's notice, and folks that would really champion me and believe in me and support. And it's really not just about the capital; it's about all the advice and acumen they have to share. And I think really finding folks that like you have a rapport with and you trust is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. Actually did one of these calls earlier today, and I'm going to just requote what that gentleman said is like, when you see him or her calling on your phone, does it make you excited to answer that call or kind of like anxious or something, you know, right? It's like, that's his sniff test to kind of find that like fit in chemistry, right? So anyway.
Right. I think it's definitely not easy. I think if you look at from the outside, so like you would think like, so we were like NEA funded, like I went to Princeton, maybe that means I knew other VCs, like I had been former founder, like despite all this, extremely difficult to raise capital. And so I hats off to like everyone out there. It's a real challenge, and it's not easy. And so I have a lot of appreciation for that.
Very good. I did mispronounce the name at the beginning. It's not Aquabytes, it's Aquabyte, and it's .no. Correct? Aquabyte, BYTE.no. So anything you want to promote or plug, or anything you're hiring for that you want to make a shout out to if anyone's listening, or anything else?
Well, I mean, we're always growing the team. We have folks in San Francisco and Norway hiring for software engineers, product managers, but really like anyone who is really feels that food sustainability is important, and folks that believe in the mission. Always happy to chat, and if they believe in it enough that they want to work for a company that promotes food sustainability, I'll always love to chat.
Cool. Very good. All right, Bryton, thanks so much. This is fun and interesting and really unusual. So I appreciate it. We'll catch you after your next round, and enjoy your time both in Norway and SF.
Thanks. And the last thing I'll plug. So we had a TV episode. I think you were alluding to this TV episode with where we showed the CTO of Amazon, Werner Vogel's, around a fish farm. And so if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know it's fascinating to me how fish farming is pretty interesting to me in general. And I'm enthusiastic because I really enjoy seafood, but I feel super guilty about what we're doing to our oceans. So hopefully this is a solution. All right, sir. Appreciate it. We'll catch you next time, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks. You too. And thanks for having me on the show.